Hello and welcome to this lecture, and in this lecture we will build the functionality for the calculator application which we have built over here. And building this was actually quite simple. You just need to understand the basics of Tkinter, that is how the rows and columns are laid out on your grid over here. So we have essentially used the grid layout to lay out all the elements because that design was the most suitable for our calculator. And now the fun part comes in where we actually make these calculator buttons as functional. So in this lecture our main aim is that when we click these particular buttons, the text should appear right over here. So that's what we actually want to achieve, and we will learn how to do that. So let me just quickly go ahead and close this calculator, and in here what we are going to do is that we are going to start writing individual functions to achieve what we want. So let's go ahead and comment over here what we actually want to achieve. So the first thing which we want to do is we want to get the user input and place it in the text field. So this is what we want to do here, or you could also say you want to place it into the input box. So for that, what we will do is that we will go ahead and create a function which is actually going to go ahead and take the input value, and it's actually going to place it into this particular text field. So we will define a function. So we'll type in def, and let's name this function as get variable or get variables, and this function is actually going to accept a number that is nothing but the number which the user is going to press, or the number on which the user is going to click. And what we will do here is that we will also define a variable outside of this that's going to be I. So we will initialize I to 0 at first, and we will also declare I as global over here. And once we have this variable, what this variable actually does is that it keeps track of the position where the value needs to be inserted. So what we want to do here is that we want to go into this entry over here which we have created right over here, which is nothing but the input field, and we want to insert a value into this input field. So for that, what we want to do is that we want to type in display.insert, and if you will notice here, it actually has three parameters, that is the index and the string. So the index actually means at which index position in this display you want to insert your string. So in order to keep track of this index position, we have taken this variable I and we have initialized it to 0, so that at first this variable always remains equal to 0. So in here we will add in the insert function, and the index here is going to be I, and the number which we want to add at this display position is nothing but this number right here. So we'll type in num over here, and once that thing is done, what we want to do is that after adding the first number, we want to increment the value of index by 1. So for that, we will type in I plus equals 1, and once that thing is done, we are good to go. So what this function is actually going to do is that it's actually going to accept a number. So for example, let's say if you press the button number 2, so what happens is that it's actually going to be passed in to this particular function. So we have 2 over here, so it's actually going to insert 2 at the index position I, which is currently equal to 0. So once we have passed in the number over here, now the index position changes and it turns out to be 1. So next time when you press another number, so instead of replacing the previous value of 2, what's going to happen is that it's going to append 3 to 2, so your number on the calculator actually becomes 23. Okay, so once this thing is done, we are pretty much good to go. Now what we want to do here is that we want to call this function whenever a user actually presses, or whenever the user actually clicks one of these buttons over here, which are the numerical buttons. So for that, what we will do is that we will add a command to each of those functions. So we'll type in command equals, and here we will use the lambda. So we'll type in lambda colon, and you just need to specify the function which you want to use. So we'll type in get variables, and in this get variables function, we simply need to pass in the individual numbers. So when the user actually presses the button having text 1, you essentially want to pass in the number 1 to this particular function so that 1 is actually displayed on the calculator. So here we will pass in 1, and we are actually going to pass in the same command to each one of those buttons, but the only change which we are going to make is that when we pass this particular command to the next function, what we want to keep in mind is that instead of passing 1 over here, As this is button number 2, you want to pass in button 2 over here. So I'm actually going to paste this in each and every button over here, which are the numerical buttons, obviously. And we're actually going to have a separate function for handling the other special buttons. So let me just quickly go ahead, paste it everywhere. So let's paste it everywhere where we have the numerical buttons, and we also need to replace those numbers. So this is going to be 4, 5, 6. This is going to be 7, 8, and 9, and this is actually going to be equal to 0. Okay, so once this thing is done, we obviously need to go ahead and check if this thing actually works. So let me save the code and run the application to see if this thing actually works. Okay, so this is our calculator, and when I hit 1, we have 1 over here. When I hit 2, we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 0. So all of these buttons actually work, and we are successful in building the functionality for basically accepting the user input over here. So in the next lecture, what we will do is that we will design the functionality to basically go ahead and delete this input field by using this button and clearing out the entire screen by using the AC button over here. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.